All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. This will be the final edition of the bullpen this year. Texas falls to Stanford in a really wild super regional. Like every game was kind of crazy. There was something interesting about every single game. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the state of the program address as we head into next season. And then it's Friday. It's Friday baseball, folks. College World Series starts today, 1 o'clock this afternoon, Central Time. Oral Roberts and TCU, I believe, go at it this afternoon. We'll find out. Folks, for those of you that have not been to the College World Series, man, I highly, highly recommend it if you are a baseball fan at all. And if you're a college baseball fan, like I'm a college baseball fan, I especially recommend it. You will have an absolute blast. I could go up there with Texas not being there and have a great time. Me and my son have been a couple times in the last 3 or 4 years. We've watched 8 games, the first 8 games of the tournament. It's great. Absolute blast of a time. I got some buddies that are up there right now, so I hope they have a good time. Let's talk about this Palo Alto Super Regional. So our thoughts coming in were we thought that, between the Coral Gables Regional and the Stanford Regional, Texas being in that Coral Gables Regional and then paired up with that Palo Alto Super Regional, we thought that was the best place for Texas to be. Not a lot of great pitching in either one of those regionals. And we picked Texas because of that. We said, we picked Texas at Coral Gables. And then when we made it to that Palo Alto Stanford Super Regional, we said, man, I just think Texas, I just felt like Texas was going to have better pitching. And I thought the bats would sort of come alive. We've been talking about Peyton Powell, and we've been talking about Eric Kennedy and how those guys have really struggled in the postseason up to the Super Regional tournament, and how, we needed those guys to get back to what they were earlier this season when they were really, Peyton Powell and Eric Kennedy were sort of dragging the Texas offense along for a long time, for a few weeks in the middle of the season, right there when they kind of went on that really long winning streak. So that was our thoughts coming in. Our thoughts afterwards are, man, what a really awesome, just interesting super regional. I thought the games were all competitive. I thought Texas absolutely belonged to be there. Belonged there. They absolutely belonged there. Playing the number 8 ranked team in the tournament. And there was just a lot of crazy stuff in this super regional. A little bit in every game. So we'll talk about all this. Let's talk about game 1. Texas scored 7 runs on 6 hits. They struck out 10 times. This is a game that Stanford controlled, but basically the entire time. Stanford had 5 runs on 9 hits, 4 doubles, and 2 home runs. They knocked the ball around. It wasn't Lucas Gordon's best outing. He dished 4 walks, 1 wild pitch, 4 strikeouts, and 3 runs on 7 hits through 5 2/3 innings. If you guys remember, our keys to this super regional for Texas were the starting pitching has to go deep and the offense has to come alive. That's what we thought. And we thought they would. But game 1, Lucas Gordon did not go very deep. Gave up a bases loaded walk in the first, 2 doubles in the third, solo home run in the 6th. And then Charlie Hurley comes in, gives up a double and a home run in the 7th. It's 5-2 at this point. Not looking good for Texas. They haven't been swinging the bat great. And then the top of the 9th comes along. And this, I forgot the kid's name. He's a closer for Stanford. Supposed to be a really, really great pitcher. He's been shutting people down all season. And he cannot throw a strike. I think they said there was I think they said he threw 26 pitches and Texas swung at one of them. He issues a walk, hits a batter, issues another walk. And then Mitchell Daly comes up there, drives one to the right center field. It's deep in the gap. Both the center fielder and the right fielder are making a play on the ball. And I think what happened, and it hits the right fielder right in the glove and just bounces off right onto the ground. And I think what happened was that center fielder undercut him so closely. I think it just distracted him. I don't know if they've interviewed the kid or interviewed both of those guys or interviewed the coach. I'm sure somebody has, but I haven't heard what exactly the reason was. I'm 99.99% sure that kid took his eyes off the ball because the center fielder jetted it was within a few feet, couple feet. I mean, it was close. Too close to be running into like that close to each other out in the outfield. So there's the big error there that scores 2. That makes it 5-4. Texas gets a ground out to shortstop. Stanford gets that out at first. Fielder's choice. We score another runs. 5-4 at that point. What'd I say? Oh, it's 5-5 at that point. So they tied it with that play. And then we get a nice single from Porter Brown to the right side that scores 2, makes it 7-5. Zane Morehouse comes in, strikes out the side, and Texas wins game 1. And they win it in a really bizarre way. They scored 5 runs on 1 hit in the top of the 9th. So at that point, Texas, and I said it on a video on TikTok, I'm like, Texas fans, you got to be feeling good about where you're at. You always talk about in any kind of format like this, series or tournament format, you want to win game 1 for absolute sure. And if possible, it's best just to go win them both right off the bat. They won game 1. And you're sitting there saying, all right, Texas is in a good spot. Stanford has to win 2 in a row to advance to the College World Series. We go to game 2. Heading into game 2, we were feeling good about LeBaron Johnson Jr. Feeling good that the offense would, get on track. We're going to be all right. It didn't. Texas offense, only 3 runs on 8 hits. They had 3 doubles, 1 triple, and a home run, but they struck out 16 times in this game. They only had 1 walk. Stanford scored 8 runs on 15 hits, 3 doubles, a home run, struck out 10, and walked 6. So LeBaron Johnson Jr., he went 4 1/3, which again is not deep like we talked about. We really needed LBJ and we really needed Lucas Gordon to push that 6-7 inning threshold, I think. And I said in a video before, on TikTok, I said we need to win this game. We need to win game 2 because I'm not feeling great about the pitching. I'm not feeling great about Tanner Witt. He struggled in Coral Gables. He's had a couple of good outings since he came back. Nothing amazing and nothing just truly terrible, but you can tell he's not himself, right? So I said, man, we need to win game 2. Well, LBJ goes 4 1/3, giving up 4 runs on 6 hits with 4 Ks, 4 walks. They bring Staley in, Travis Staley, who's been a starter earlier this year, kind of got moved out of that role at some point mid-season-ish. And he immediately gives up a 2-run home run. At that point, the game was close. Texas actually had a lead early in this game. And then Stanford goes on and has a 3-run top of the 9th that sort of stretched it because it was like 5-3. 3-run tie. So it's close. It was a close game for the majority of the game, but they did leg it out there at the end. Quinn Matthews throws 156 pitches. This kid has had over 300 pitches in the last 2 weekends. the regional and the super regional. There's a lot of people that are like, I mean, there was a lot of people on the internet that were pissed off about that, and I get it. But my thing is, he wasn't really. They weren't stressful pitches. He wasn't throwing a lot of breaking balls. He wasn't even throwing a lot of fastballs. This kid threw changeup. I bet you out of those 156 pitches, over 100 of those pitches were changeups because Texas absolutely 1000% could not lay off of that pitch. So he has a complete game. They did a bunch of talk about how he got drafted last year in the 19th round, and he was kind of shocked by that. He didn't think that he didn't think Major League Baseball valued him as much as he valued himself. And that's all, that may be true. I've only seen him pitch one time. So my judgment, my opinion on him is based solely on that fact. He was super effective. Don't get me wrong. 156 pitches, complete game, 16 strikeouts. And man, he made some pretty good hitters for Texas look really stupid all night long. But he just doesn't seem like he's a major league pitcher to me. His fastball's low 90s, and that won't keep you out of Major League Baseball. But I don't think you can sit there and throw 100 changeups in full major league hitters. At one point, they put a graphic up where 99 of his pitches were strikes. And I bet you 30 of those were pitches that were never in the strike zone, and Texas just went up there flailing away. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the MLB draft. I'm sure he'll get drafted. I don't think it's going to be very high, and I don't think he's the type of guy that's ever going to make it on a major league roster. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again. He certainly pitched his ass off that night. I'm not trying to put the kid down at all. That was an amazing performance. I mean, that would be amazing performance in like Little League. And he did it at a very high level in a very pressure-packed situation in an elimination game in the super regional. So kudos to that kid. For all the people that are bitching and moaning about him pitching 156 pitches, I don't know. I mean, guys in the major leagues used to do that shit all the time. I think we have a tendency to overreact to everything. So we started having injuries because we were over pitching people. And so it became the consensus that you just can't do that anymore, even though people had done it forever. I mean, there's people calling it criminal. I don't know. I mean, they're welcome to their opinion. I didn't think it was criminal. He was cruising. He never really seemed to struggle at all. He never looked tired. He never looked fatigued. He was on absolute cruise control. Good, outstanding outing for him. So really, this game 2, a winnable game for Texas, and in my opinion, like a must win in the super regional. They really needed to get game 2. The outcome of this game was the product of two different approaches offensively. So Stanford comes up there, and they know LeBaron Johnson Jr. has got a very live fastball, mid-90s, and he has a very wicked slider. It's a wipeout slider. This thing comes in, it looks exactly like the fastball. Then at the last second, it just cuts away and down. And it's not so much away. It's got a lot of vertical break and not a ton of horizontal break. So they know that. I mean, that's his pitches. He throws he'll throw a cutter every once in a while, or like a little split finger type pitch every once in a while. But those are his two main pitches. And out of Coral Gables, it gave Miami absolute fits, and it's given a lot of teams fits this year. Stanford says we're not swinging at that shit, because the best thing we can hope for if we swing at that little splitter pitch or that little slider that he throws, the best thing that can happen is we're going to top it, knock it down into the ground. We're going to get thrown out at first. So they wait. And they are patient at the plate, and they start to force the strike zone smaller and smaller for LeBaron Johnson Jr. and further up in the strike zone for LeBaron Johnson Jr. And then they started teeing off on baseballs. Texas, they knew Quinn Matthews was going to throw a bunch of changeups. They knew he was almost never going to throw a fastball. Very rarely was he going to throw a breaking pitch. And how does Texas use that information? They go up there and they look like a 2-year-old trying to hit a home run at a Ranger Stadium. Just hacking. Just swinging the smooth out of their socks at pitches that, I mean, I'm not lying. These pitches were never in the strike zone. There's no way they thought that's a strike. And maybe that's why that kid is so effective. He's got he's really got a good record. And I mean, maybe that ball looks juicy. You know how those high fastballs, everybody knows you shouldn't swing at them, but they look so good. They look so hittable. Maybe that's what he's got going on. I obviously was not seeing the pitches from the batter's perspective, but a vast majority of these pitches that Texas was swinging at, especially early in the counts, they never look like strikes to me. And then by the end of the at-bat, Texas is so freaking confused about what's coming, where it's coming, what it's going to look like. He would juice one right down the middle of the strike zone. And this happened multiple times in this game. He would get guys looking at third pitch strikes. So they weren't like tough pitches. I mean, they weren't like edge of the plate pitches. These were like really good pitches to hit. And that happened almost, it wasn't till about the 7th or 8th inning, maybe even, where Texas finally started taking some pitches and getting this guy into some deeper counts and forcing him to do what Stanford forced LBJ to do much earlier in the game, which is throw me some pitches I can hit. I think ultimately that was the difference in the game. Stanford was patient, waited LBJ out, got him to the point where he wasn't going to get that low strike call anymore. And so he went up in the zone and with fastballs, and that's when Stanford really started eating. So they lose that game 8-3. We're headed into Monday for game 3. And man, for me, it just not looking good. We're hoping against hope that Tanner Witt can somehow put something together. And it just did not happen. Texas offense had 6 runs on 11 hits. They had 3 doubles, 12 strikeouts, 6 walks. Stanford had 7 runs on 13 hits, a double, a home run, 6 Ks, and 7 walks. I think Texas did a much better job at the plate. You could tell that David Pierce had conversations with them and said, "Guys, we have got to like make these guys work," and they did, but they just couldn't get a breakthrough hit, like a bust out type hit. I mean, they got a lot of hits and some key hits to score some runs, but they stranded 7 runners in the final 4 innings of this game. They just quite couldn't get the 2-out hit they needed to put themselves ahead and maybe be in a position to hang on. And this was a back and forth game. This was like a heavyweight boxing match type of game. Stanford scored 3 in the bottom of the 2nd. Texas scored 3 in the top of the 4th. O'Dowd comes up there and gets a really nice base clearing double. Stanford comes back immediately in the bottom of the 4th and gets 3 again. 6-3. And then 3 in the top of the 8th for Texas. A walk, another O'Dowd double, a Powell double, and a Campbell single. And then the bottom of the 9th happens. The ninth inning was bad for both teams at least once in this series. The drama really started off with the Rios home run. He smacks one to left field right at they have like these at Stanford, they have like these signs on the field, outfield wall that look like baseballs. They're white and I don't even remember what it was. I don't even remember what was on the sign, what was on the image, but it's a baseball, big giant baseball that covers up, most of the wall. He hit it dead right at that thing at left field, and it hits. I actually think I never went back and re-looked at it, but I actually think it hit the ground right in front of that, bounced up, and came back. Well, all he saw was the ball headed that direction, and he smoked it. He got a good shot on the ball, and I think he saw it disappear in that huge white baseball, and he thought it was over the fence. So he runs around first, and he grabs his helmet and throws it off, and almost gets thrown out at second. And it's funny, you see him, the umpire standing right next to him. He's taking his gloves off. He's got this confused look on his face. He doesn't turn his head completely to the umpire, but he's like, you could see him mouth it. That didn't go out. And so that was crazy. He could have gotten thrown out at second on a easy double. But there were a lot of people that, like, immediately there was a tweet that went out, and I forgot even who sent it, but there was this tweet that went out that, oh, you can't throw your helmet, and like had a screen cap of the rule book and some stuff that was highlighted. I don't know. I don't know if it's a rule to throw your helmet like that. I feel like it probably should be. If you're running around the bases and you deliberately throw off a piece of equipment, I would think there's a rule against that. Now, I don't care. Like, I'm not saying Texas lost because of that and they missed a call. I don't think that's the case. But I did think it was strange. I mean, I know why he did it, but I thought it was strange that there was no discussion on the broadcast about that. I don't even know. I think it looked like David Pierce was having a discussion with the umpires about it, but I don't know. Again, he's not hot mic'd up. So anyway, and then comes Bowser with the single. Man, what an absolute kick in the nuts type of play to lose any baseball game. Like, it could be the first game of the year. And the pitcher does by the way, Lucas Gordon comes in, and I believe he came in the 8th. He was the game 1 starter. And he threw like 90 something pitches, I think, in that game 1. Well, he comes in the 8th inning, comes back in for the 9th inning. And the interesting thing was, we were coming around to the top of the order. We had the 9, 1, and 2 hitters up in what would have been extra bases or extra innings. And we were kind of moving through Stanford's heart of the order in the 9th. So as all this was unfolding, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if we can get this last out, we got 9, 1, and 2 coming up. I mean, obviously nothing's guaranteed in baseball, but that's where you want to be. And actually, Mitchell Daly probably, I haven't looked at all the stats or anything, and his numbers weren't amazing in this series, but he had some really good at bats in this series. He's the 9-hole guy. So who knows what happens if Texas gets that final out, but that's not what happened. The ball went straight up in the air about probably, I bet, not even midway out into the outfield. Just a lazy, I mean, as soon as he hit it, here's a funny story. I'm sitting there, and when I get nervous, I stand up, and I'm kind of pacing around the living room watching this whole 9th inning unfold. And as soon as he hit that pitch, I turned around, and I was going to go walk into the kitchen. And then I hear like someone screaming. I turn back around, and that's when you see Mitchell Daly pointing. He's the only one that saw it, by the way, at the shortstop. He's pointing, trying to point to the ball and running out to the direction of where the ball is. Jack O'Dowd at second base, who could have easily made a play on this ball had he seen it, did not see the ball. Dylan Campbell, right fielder, one of the best in college baseball, did not see the ball. Eric Kennedy, outstanding center fielder for Texas, has been for years. Outstanding outfielder. He hasn't always played center field. Did not see the ball. So this ball ends up landing, I don't know, probably within 20 feet of 4 guys, harmlessly for the game-winning walk-off single. Just punch in the nuts. Like, but you go back to, I did a video, right? Almost immediately after it, I said, Texas Texas was kind of the benefactor of a flukish play in game 1 in the 9th inning. The baseball gods brought it back around and paid Stanford off. So 3 like really enjoyable games to watch. Obviously, the outcome isn't what Texas fans wanted. That's baseball, and Stanford's a really good team. And for Texas to go to the Super Regional this year, for me, I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell that was going to happen. So there's a lot of discussion about the officiating, really this whole Super Regional. I don't think it was very good, and I don't think it benefited necessarily either team unequally. Like, I mean, there was bad calls when Stanford was in there. There was bad calls when Texas was in there pitching. Just bad calls out in the field. The strike zone was not very consistent, and it was up. There's a lot of strike 3 calls above the belt in this game or in this series, especially game 3. And a lot of really good bottom of the strike zone pitches were called balls. So the strike zone was, to me, not good, not consistent. It was consistently bad, and for both teams. So we're not complaining here. We're just pointing out. We're just talking about some of the stuff that a lot of people talked about after this game. The hit batsman thing, I thought was when Porter Brown got hit, I don't. That's a tough one for me. I think, here's how I'll say it. I think that's a stupid rule, but I think the rule was applied correctly. For me, the batter should own the batter should have the batter's box. If I'm in the batter's box and I move to try to avoid a pitch and it hits me, I should get first base because the batter's box is mine. Now, if I reach my hand out over the plate and get hit in my hand, I should not get first base because I intentionally stuck my hand where I'm not supposed to be and got hit by the ball. I don't remember the exact situation of that whole thing. I don't remember what game. I don't even remember what game. I think it was in game 3, but it might have been in game 2. I don't remember all the specifics of it and what would have happened if he would have got first base in terms of, will we have got a run? I don't know. I can't remember. But I thought that was a strange call. You don't see that a lot. And I'm not even sure he meant to try to get hit. I mean, I know it kind of looked like it. I don't know. The tag at second base that Dylan Campbell had. So, and this was an amazing play, y'all. Dylan Campbell runs down a little single, like kind of in shallow right field. So he's running towards the foul line, scoops this ball, gets his hip turns, and fires a rocket to second base. It was a little off the bag, but the guy that was at first had rounded second like he was going to go to third. Last second said, I'm not going to make it to third. And I thought that not only did Mitchell Daly tag him on the shoulder, if you looked real closely when they kept slowing it down and re-showing it for the replay, his glove bent right when he got to his shoulder. And if he got him, it wasn't by much, but I do think he got him. The glove moved. And then he tagged him on the ass subsequently. This guy was basically out on the same play twice. They called him safe on the field. And they upheld that ruling. And I thought it was a bad call. It didn't matter. They ended up hitting one out to right field. Dylan Campbell fielded it and threw the guy out at third anyway. Really, really smooth throw. Really nice tag by Peyton Powell. So I thought there was some stuff that the officiating blew. I don't know how much any of it affected the series. I don't think it did. I don't recall walking away from any of these games and thinking to myself, yeah, the officials really screwed us on this one. But a lot of people were talking about that stuff. So I figured I'd talk about it. Final thoughts on this super regional. Man, ultimately what got Texas was 38 strikeouts. They when they hit the ball good. They had a lot of extra base hits in this game or this series. But they just struggled at the plate. And really in that second game, it was a non-competitive event. I think I think they were just too amped up. They all wanted to go. Something I used to tell our kids, and I say our kids, our baseball boys, when I used to coach baseball, I used to always talk to them about letting the pitch come to them. If it's going to be a strike, it's going to have to come to you. You're standing at the plate. He's going to have to throw you a pitch. And I think Texas did not let it come to them for the majority of that game, too. They were really aggressive, which I don't mind aggressive, but they were over aggressive. The pitching was okay, wasn't as crisp as it needed to be. Didn't get those deep outings like we talked about we needed. So the keys to this one for us were pitching. Starter and pitchers got to go deep. And the offense, needed to show up in a big way because Stanford has a really good offense. And ultimately neither one of those things happened. I don't know if they played 10 times how many games Texas would win, but I felt like in that 3-game series that Stanford was clearly the better team. So Stanford's College World Series outlook, we'll talk about this real quick. I think they might win one game. I think they're going to end up in the losers bracket really quick. They're going to be fighting off. They're going to be playing elimination games really quick. They might be able to beat a Tennessee team if they get into that, if they get into an elimination game with Tennessee. But I think that's it for Stanford. I think they're good. I don't think they're the 8th seed in the whole tournament. I mean, we talked about this on the show last week when we previewed this super regional. I don't know how in the world they're the 8th seed. Their resume, not good. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Another interesting stat. These guys have won, was it 10? 9 or 10 elimination games. And they're like 9 and 10 or 0. And 0 rather. So they're undefeated in these elimination games the last 2 seasons in the regional and the super regional. And it's 10 games. So they played 5 elimination games in the regional and super regional last year, and they did the same thing this year. So they're a resilient team. They typically get to Omaha and aren't as resilient. So we'll see what happens. Texas and Stanford were the only 2 teams left in the tournament last weekend that had been to Omaha the last 2 College World Series. So this is 3 straight for Stanford. So we'll see how they do. State of the program address. Texas goes 42-22 on the season. We talked earlier in the season about, man, this team looks 500-ish. They far exceeded that. I don't think there's any Texas fans that should be upset about this season at all. We turned over 2/3 of the lineup. We turned over 2/3 of the pitching rotation. And they still made it to a super regional. And they had chances to win it. I mean, they did not get run out of a super regional. Like Arkansas got ran out of their regional with TCU. Like just smooth ass kicking. And Texas was competitive in all 3 games against Stanford. The pitching was shorthanded this year. Obviously, Tanner Witt being out was a problem. He was out for the majority of the year. It took David Pierce a long, long time to figure out like what kind of rotation he wanted and how he wanted to use guys out of the bullpen. I don't know that he ever totally figured that out because things were changing even very late in the season. The offense was sort of hit or miss. Man, when it was on, it was on. It was very, very good. That's what was it? 16-game winning streak they went on. They were crushing the baseball, and Peyton Powell and Eric Kennedy led the charge there. And then you had guys like Porter Brown that would get really, really hot and then kind of fall off a little bit and then get really, really hot. And then Dylan Campbell came along. Dylan Campbell's last 2 seasons offensively have been almost mirror images of each other. The start of the season is like, what the hell? Like, why is this guy in the lineup? I mean, he literally can't even hit the ball. Like, he can't put the bat on the ball. And I don't know what it is about him and his approach and, how he gets to the point he's gotten to the last 2 seasons from about mid-season on. I don't know what that looks like, but it turns amazing for Dylan Campbell. He is a really good player, which, by the way, we'll talk about that in a second. The offense was very, big hit heavy. Lots of home runs is where they got a lot of scores. They weren't a team that had very many instances this year where they sort of just had a lot of base hits, strung some hits together to score some runs, manufactured some runs that way. They weren't that type of team. The only time I can recall them actually doing that this season, I'm sure they've done it more than this, but Kansas State game, they had like 5 base hits in a row in 1 inning and scored, I don't know how many runs they scored in that inning, but that was really the only time I can remember going, man, they just manufactured some runs by just putting the ball out into the, out in play, getting it out in play and getting base hits with it. So the offense was okay. It was pretty good actually, but it wasn't as home run heavy as last year. So who's gone? So now we got to sit here and go, well, who's coming back? A lot of, we talked earlier this year about this would be an inexperienced team playing together, but not an inexperienced team. There's a lot of older guys on this team that contributed. So there's a possibility of a lot of folks leaving. So let's run down what we got here. Who's gone? And I say these guys are gone simply because they participated in senior day. I don't know if that necessarily means they're gone. I have a feeling if you participate in senior day, you've made some sort of conscious decision that this is going to be your last year playing college baseball at the University of Texas. Porter Brown's one of those guys. He's a junior. He's got another year of eligibility. Porter Brown is a guy that wants to be a doctor. So I don't even know if Porter Brown has any thoughts on playing professional sports. I think he's talented. I think he could play some professional sports, but he wants to be a doctor. So I think, and he participated in senior day, I think he's just, man, I got to get on with the rest of my life. I got to go to med school. Tanner Carlson's a guy that has another year of eligibility. He participated in senior day. He's a transfer from, I don't remember which school out in California. But he sort of fell into the DH role late in the season and was doing really well. He's batting over 300. He became a really solid bat in the lineup for Texas before he broke his arm in the, what was that? It was the final series of the year against West Virginia. Eric Kennedy has 0 eligibility left. It'd be interesting to see what EK does. I think he'll get drafted. I don't think it'll be very high. I think he could play some baseball. Lucas Gordon, he'll get drafted. Tanner Witt, he'll get drafted. And this one's weird to me. And I don't know if I've talked about this before. There's a lot of people that think Tanner Witt's like a first round guy right now. Anywhere from first to third round, which is pretty high, obviously. And man, I don't get it. I don't understand why. And they all talk about, oh, his spin rate's elite and da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, but he hasn't pitched that much. I mean, he's been at Texas for 3 seasons. He pitched something like 35 innings as a freshman, a lot of it in relief and some of it in really good spots and against really good. I mean, he came in against Tennessee in the College World Series in an elimination game 2 years ago. I was there, by the way. Fun game, not for Tennessee, but he came in with, I think it was Tristan Stevens was the starter in that game, and he struggled. He didn't make it very deep into the game. And Tanner Witt came in as a freshman and just mowed through a really, really good offensive Tennessee team. Shut them down. But he only threw like 30, I think it was 35 innings his freshman year. Didn't pitch at all. Well, he had 2 outings last year before I think he was actually starting his 3rd game when he was warming up before the game. And that's when he tore his, or that's when I guess it's the tear. I don't know. I'm assuming it's a tear of some ligament. Whatever happened, that's what caused him to have to get Tommy John surgery. And then he had, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 maybe outings this year. He hasn't thrown a lot. I mean, for a guy that's been in college baseball for 3 years, and supposedly a lot of MLB scouts love him. I mean, they're literally basing that off of like some spin rate thing. And maybe that's important. Maybe I underestimate the importance of it. If it was me, if I'm throwing big money at these draft picks, I'm not drafting a dude like Tanner Witt in the first 3 rounds. It's probably why I'm not a Major League Baseball GM, but that seems ridiculous to me. There's so many good arms out there. Proven, haven't been injured. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I hope he gets drafted 1 through 3 for him. Good luck, Tanner, on that. Then you got DJ Burke, who's in the transfer portal. He went into the transfer portal right after I think it was right after the Big 12 tournament. So before the NCAA tournament even started, DJ Burke says, I'm done at Texas. And then he was a kid. I think he was a freshman. He had some really good numbers out of the bullpen. So I don't know what's going on with him, and why he wanted to leave Texas. His role got very limited towards the end, and I'm not sure why. I think his ERA for the season was like 2.05. I don't know. Anyway, he's transferring. Zane Morehouse participated in senior day. Zane Morehouse had a actually a really, really good postseason. I don't think he's a high draft pick, but he's probably going to get drafted somewhere. Sam Walbridge participated in senior day. He's another pitcher that, as the season wore on, you just saw less and less of Sam Walbridge. Same thing with Chase Loomis. He participated in senior day. Cam Constantine, another transfer, participated in senior day. And Cam is I believe a third baseman type, utility type guy. Dre Duplantier, pitcher, participated in senior day. So that's a lot of guys on the we think are gone list. And then there's the who might be gone list, which Dylan Campbell's at the top of that. Although I did see his dad tweeted something about running it back. So who knows what'll happen there. I hope Dylan Campbell comes back. Please, Dylan Campbell, come back. You got Peyton Powell. He's a junior this year. Had a good offensive season, pretty good defensive season. Could he be a guy that decides, if I get drafted, I'm gonna go. Peyton Powell's been sitting there waiting for 3 years at Texas to play, and he finally gets a shot and has I think he had a really good season. So he might be thinking to himself, I need to strike while the iron's hot. So if I get drafted even somewhat reasonable, he might be gone. LBJ had a really good season pitching. Who knows what the MLB thinks of him and where he might go. Eric Gillimet, catcher. He's got a year left. I think he's a really good college catcher. I don't know how good he would be in Major League Baseball. Or if he could even get to that point. But he's a guy that could get drafted. Jack O'Dowd, same thing. He's a guy that could get drafted. So that's a lot of guys. I mean, you're looking at the same type of turnover as we had last year or worse. And what really hurts Texas is Pierce's transfer portal pitching misses were really, really bad misses. On the whole, all of the pitching that he brought in last year in the transfer portal did not pan out. Needs for next season, I think they need a shortstop. I think Mitchell Daly needs to move his ass back to second base. I think they need a legit shortstop. See if we can pick one up in the transfer portal. Outfield, you're going to need a bunch of outfielders because pretty much the whole outfield at least has a chance of being gone. If Dylan Campbell comes back, you're going to lose 2 out of the 3 in the outfield. Got to bring some guys in that can be starters. You might lose LBJ. You're going to lose Lucas Gordon. You're going to lose Tanner Witt. So last year it was 2/3. This year it could be the whole damn end of the season starting rotation gone. They need to find some arms in the bullpen. They need to find some arms that can come in and be effective out of the bullpen. And then possibly a catcher. You got Rylan Galvan that played a lot earlier in the season, but he hadn't played a lot down the stretch. He never really got the bat going. He had some moments. So I don't know what they're thinking on him. And then there's some other kid that literally never played that's also a catcher. A lot of talk, and I do some about David Pierce. How good of a coach really is he? This dude has been to 3 World Series, College World Series, and he almost figured out a way to get to 4th with a team that he had to find 2/3 of it and figure that out. 2/3 of the lineup, 2/3 of the starting pitching rotation gone. And a team that, again, we thought was like a 500 team. And I know a lot of people that at the beginning of this season were going, ugh, it's going to be a gross year. This isn't going to be a fun one. Now, if he would have made it to the College World Series this year, here's the problem with Pierce. He would have likely had his 3rd 2 and done, 2 and gone, 2 and barbecue, whatever you want to say. Out of the 4 College World Series he would have gone to, 3 of them were likely. 2 of them absolutely were, and this one probably would have been 2 games and go home. That's kind of a problem. Like, Texas fans want to see College World Series wins. They want to see the team compete. They want to see the team, at the very least make their bracket final. Give themselves a chance to go on and possibly win the whole thing. And then I think when you start looking at David Pierce, you look at his roster, you got to start thinking about he's going to the SEC after next season. Texas is, and I'm assuming he'll be the coach. So we'll pretend he is, see what happens, right? But it's going to be different. It's going to be more competitive. The Big 12 is a really, and traditionally has been a really good baseball league. So I don't think it's a huge jump. But I think the type of players you see in the SEC are a little bit different. Some of those dudes on some of those SEC teams look like 30-year-old men. And some of the players for Texas are like 6'2", 180 pounds. And those are like the big ones. So I think he's got to start preparing his roster to more closely resemble what these rosters look like for these SEC schools. Just to be able to compete over there. All right, 8 at the plate. Who are they? Virginia, Indiana State. Oh, these were my picks. So I picked Virginia, Indiana State, Oral Roberts, Wake Forest, LSU, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Texas. I went 5 for 8. I had Indiana State over TCU. TCU won that series, I believe, in 2 games. Won that super regional. Looked really good. Pitching was outstanding for TCU in that super regional. I had South Carolina over Florida, who also lost in 2 games. And then I had Texas over Stanford. But I think that's pretty respectable. 5 for 8. That's not too bad. Bracket 1, you got Oral Roberts versus TCU, Virginia versus Florida. So Oral Roberts and TCU will go at 1 today. Virginia and Florida will go at 6 p.m. This is all Central Times. Bracket 2, Stanford, Wake Forest at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Tennessee and LSU at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Just my early thoughts. I think bracket 2 looks the toughest. I think it's going to be really tough to get out of that second bracket. You got Wake Forest, who's got the best ERA in baseball, one of the best offenses in baseball, hits a lot of home runs. You got LSU, who was ranked number 1 for, 16 weeks or 6, some stupid amount of times they did the poll in a row. LSU was the number 1 team, and they've looked really good so far in this postseason. And you got a Tennessee team that, the interesting thing about the SEC, I guess there's a lot of leagues like this, like Oklahoma, from the Big 12 last year, they go and play in the final. Ole Miss won the damn thing last year, and they were a team that a lot of people didn't think even deserved to be in the tournament. And now Tennessee is a team where they've got some experience now. They've been a couple times to the College World Series, and it hasn't been good to them yet, but they got the talent. So Tennessee's a tough team. I really think Stanford is the bottom of the barrel in that bracket, and that's why I think they got a good shot at going 2 and done. One thing that's interesting about, and it's not TD Ameritrade anymore, it's Charles Schwab Field now. I don't know when that changed. Maybe it changed last year or between the last 2. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. It's a pretty big ballpark. It's a lot bigger than the ballparks a lot of these teams play in. So all this home run ball shit we've been seeing, you do see home runs at the College World Series. You don't see them like at the same pace you saw them in super regionals and in regionals. So that may hurt teams like Wake Forest, Florida, TCU. TCU has hit a bunch of freaking home runs in this postseason. So I look at these 2 brackets and I got to pick. I think it's going to be Florida and Wake Forest in the final. I have no idea who ends up winning that. The cool thing about Omaha and the College World Series is you never freaking know what's going to happen. It's exciting. So check out those games. If you're anywhere close to Nebraska, get your ass out there and go watch the games. It is a blast. You will not regret it. Join us Monday on the Cheap Seats. We're going to talk with Chris from the Spurs Up Show. About 9 a.m. Central Time is when we'll do that. We're going to talk all kinds of stuff, SEC football. The 2024 schedules have been released. There's a lot of conversation going on about that. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you don't want to do that, you can go to horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. You'll see all my podcasts at that website. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click on the bell to get those notifications. You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Horn Takes. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Last big weekend of baseball, and then we got the national championship next weekend. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.